I spent months fighting Amazon to get my KDP account back. Months of appeals, documentation, sleepless nights, relentless determination. I hired attorneys, I crafted the perfect plan of action. I refused to take no for an answer. And eventually, I won. The email arrived, the one I'd been waiting for. My account was reinstated. Yay! My books were live again. But here's what nobody talks about. The first thing I felt wasn't relief, it wasn't celebration, it wasn't victory, it was actually dread. Because in that moment, staring at that reinstatement email, I realized something deeply uncomfortable. The thing that I'd fought so hard for was actually the thing keeping me stuck. I'm Beryl, host of The Radiant Reset, jewelry designer and author, and this is where we talk about building lives and businesses in midlife that feel good, not just ones that look good on paper. And today we're talking about Amazon KDP, not from a guru's perspective, but from a midlife reality check. So, if you're in midlife and you've been looking for ways to create more income, whether it's a side hustle or a complete reinvention, if you've been told that an online business, specifically Amazon KDP, is your golden ticket to freedom, if you've bet your future on this dream of passive income, this conversation is for you. So, let me take you back to the beginning, when I still believed wholeheartedly in the dream. I'm a jewelry designer by trade. That's been my creative foundation for almost 2 decades, and it's something that I'm actively returning to and expanding on a smaller scale again, on top of everything else that I do. But like many women in midlife, at this stage, I was looking for more than one income stream and also expanding my writing potential. I was looking for resilience, flexibility, options, and also being able to work from anywhere in the world. Maybe some of you came from corporate backgrounds and you're looking for an exit strategy, or maybe you're already self-employed but need to diversify. Maybe you just want something that doesn't require you to trade hours for dollars anymore, or maybe you're wanting more financial independence, especially in midlife. Writing had always been part of my life, and publishing felt like a way to build something scalable alongside my other creative work. And Amazon KDP seemed like the answer. So I went all in. I invested thousands, not in one course, but in two, because I was told that this was the system, the shortcut, the path to freedom. What wasn't emphasized nearly enough was the real cost of this business. KDP requires capital in order to do it properly. Not pocket money, real money, software, covers, editing, and most of all, ads. This is not something you do to get out of debt. This is not a start with $100 model. And the people teaching it, well, many are operating with seven-figure infrastructures that midlife creators like myself simply don't have. That's a lesson I learned the expensive way. The courses I took were run by these people making seven figures, well over seven figures in one case. And here's what I didn't realize at the time, that these people are not starting from where you and I are starting from. They already have massive infrastructures behind them. Teams, budgets, systems, they're playing a completely different game to someone in midlife who's trying to create a sustainable income stream. So be very careful about following the wrong guide down the wrong path. I did this twice, once with Amazon KDP and once with a course on course creation. Both times I was following someone whose success was built on a foundation that I simply didn't have. And let me be clear about something. I didn't dabble in this. Inside those courses, I learned how Amazon actually works behind the scenes. I learned niche validation, using real demand data, keyword research, down to search intent, how cover design directly affects click-through rates, and pricing psychology inside Amazon's ecosystem, and how ads are structured to feed the algorithm. I tracked ACOS. I understood break-even points. I tested ads that lost money and ads that worked. This wasn't ignorance. This was education, expensive education. I treated it like a real business because that's what all the successful people tell you to do. And for a while it was working, and it still sort of is, but anyway, I uploaded my first few books, then dozens. My sales dashboard became my daily dose of validation proof that I was creating life on my own terms. And every royalty payment felt like evidence that I was building something real, something sustainable, something mine. The process itself seemed deceptively simple. Upload a manuscript, create a cover, hit publish, without paying a dime for printing. And suddenly you have access to millions of potential customers. I was building my own little empire, one book at a time. This wasn't just a business, it was my declaration of independence. So you can imagine the sheer gut-wrenching panic when I woke up one morning to an email with the subject line, "Your KDP account has been terminated." Well, not suspended, not a warning, terminated. All books removed, royalties frozen, lifetime ban. No meaningful explanation, not a warning, not a slap on the wrist, a permanent ban. All those thousands of dollars I'd invested in courses, software, ads, all of it felt like it was evaporating in front of me. The entire business I had poured my life and soul into was just severed, gone. The email was cold, automated, vague. It mentioned violations of their guidelines without telling me exactly what I'd actually done wrong. And it felt like being convicted of a crime without ever hearing the charges, without getting to actually defend myself, without any path to appeal that felt real. I went looking for answers and found thousands of authors, just like me. Some had eventually been reinstated. Most had never heard back from Amazon. The advice was a confusing mess. Craft the perfect plan of action, admit fault, even when you don't know what you've actually done, be humble, be detailed, hire lawyers, pay more money, try this email address, try that one, do this, do that. Anyway, some people got reinstated in days, while others were terminated for life. My life narrowed down to one obsession at that point, getting my account back. I spent hours, then days, then weeks drafting appeals, even while I was on holiday in Amsterdam, visiting family and friends. I sent polite, desperate messages into the void. I documented everything. I tried to reason with a support system that felt like a brick wall. Automated responses, generic rejections, each one saying the decision was final. Each rejection was another gut punch, another sleepless night, another day where I felt like a failure, like I'd somehow destroyed the one good thing that I'd built for myself. The dream of freedom had turned into a desperate battle against a faceless algorithm. I wasn't building a business anymore. I was just fighting to stay in the game. Fighting to prove I deserved to be there, fighting for validation that I wasn't a criminal, that I hadn't actually done something terrible. Fighting to justify all those thousands of dollars I'd spent believing in this dream. I told myself that if I could just win this, if I could get my account back, everything would be okay, that victory was all that mattered. And after months of appeals, documentation, and persistence, I succeeded. I got my KDP account back. Yay! I won! Here's where the story changes. Winning didn't feel like freedom, it felt like being allowed back into a system that no longer felt aligned. The moment I read that email, I braced for the wave of relief, the celebration, the validation that all that fighting, all that money, all that effort had been worth it. But it never came. Instead, a quiet, heavy sense of dread washed over me. I knew I had to start again from the beginning. I logged back into my dashboard. I looked at my books, my sales numbers, my ads, and I felt nothing. Well, that's not true. I felt exhausted, and then I felt trapped, because here's the uncomfortable truth about KDP in 2026. It is largely a pay-to-play system. If you're not running ads consistently, your books disappear. Organic reach is minimal. Margins shrink. AI content floods the platform. And then there's exclusivity. KDP Select quietly nudges you into locking your ebooks into one ecosystem, one platform, one point of failure. I had just fought to get back into a cage that I hadn't realized I was actually in. That passive income dream, it's largely a myth. KDP isn't passive at the start. Everyone knows that. But here's what they don't tell you. It's definitely not passive in the long run either. As I said, the reality of KDP in 2026 is a pay-to-play battlefield. If you're not running ads, and I mean consistently, with a real budget, your books are buried. The organic reach that existed a few years ago, well, it's basically gone now. There's a growing wave of AI-generated content flooding the platform, as I said, and your book can disappear the moment that it's actually published, unless you're paying to keep it visible. So here's the part that nobody budgets for. Amazon ads aren't a launch cost, they're a forever cost. When ads stop, visibility drops. That means your cash flow becomes unpredictable. You're constantly reinvesting just to stay visible, and profit becomes theoretical unless you have scale. I wasn't totally losing money, but I wasn't building peace either. And in midlife, peace matters the most. So on top of being a writer, a publisher, a cover designer, and a marketer, I now had to be a full-time ad manager, constantly tweaking campaigns, watching my profits get eaten away by ad costs, exorbitant ad costs, just to stay visible. And those juicy royalties they advertise, well, let's talk about the fine print. That 60% for paperbacks, that's before printing costs. And starting in 2026, that rate drops to 50% for many books priced under certain regional thresholds. Your margins just got slimmer. The 70% ebook royalty, it only applies if you price within a very specific window. And the whole system nudges you towards select, meaning 90 days of digital exclusivity, where you can't sell your ebook anywhere else online. You become completely dependent on a single platform. A platform that can, as I learned firsthand, pull the plug on your entire business without any warning, without explanation, without recourse. I had fought for the key to a door only to find myself in a room where the walls were slowly closing in on me. The fight to get my account back had distracted me from asking a much more important question, which was, is this business actually giving me the freedom that I thought it would? This was my midlife reality check. Not just about Amazon, but about how we make decisions at this stage of life. So many of us stay because we've already invested money, time, identity, energy. That's the sunken cost fallacy, and it keeps women trapped in systems long after they stop serving us. So many of us, especially at this stage of life, are looking for ways to create income that offers both freedom and flexibility. Maybe you need a side hustle on top of what you're already doing, or maybe you want to just leave corporate entirely, or maybe like me, you have a creative business, you love, but you want to be more flexible and able to work remotely from wherever you are in the world. Or maybe you need additional income streams to make it all work. We're told to build our own thing, create multiple streams of income, and follow the guides who've already made it big. We're told that if we just follow their system, we'll get their results. And that's not wrong, but here's what I learned the very hard way. What happens when the thing you're building becomes an even more demanding boss than the one that you might have left? And what happens when the system only works if you have the infrastructure, the budget, and the huge, massive team that the seven-figure guru already has? I had fallen straight into the sunk cost fallacy. I'd poured so much money, so much time, so much energy, so much hope into KDP that I couldn't imagine walking away. Those thousands of dollars I'd spent on courses, the software subscriptions, the ad spend, the hours upon hours of learning and implementing, the fight to get my account back was really just a fight to justify all that investment, all those dollars, all those hours. If I walked away, didn't that mean it was all for nothing? Didn't that mean that I'd wasted all that money? But I was beginning to realize something crucial. True freedom isn't about winning every battle. Sometimes it's about knowing which battles are even worth fighting. That account suspension, the nightmare I fought so hard to end, was actually a gift. It forced me to pause. It forced me to step back and ask a terrifying question. Is this grinding, ad-dependent, algorithm-driven business really the freedom that I was looking for? The answer, when I finally let myself be honest, was no. The freedom I wanted wasn't just about working from home. It wasn't about being my own publishing boss, if being my own boss meant actually being enslaved to platforms constantly changing rules and algorithms. The freedom I wanted was about peace of mind. It was about building something that felt sustainable, not like a constant gamble. It was about not waking up in a panic every time I got an email from Amazon. It was about creating work that energized me instead of draining me. It was about getting back to the creative work that I actually love, like jewelry design and writing and my podcast, instead of being chained to an ad dashboard. It was about not being dependent on one volatile platform that could take everything away in a single automated email. This whole experience taught me a crucial midlife lesson, one that goes way beyond Amazon KDP. You have to be willing to let go of the dreams you've outgrown. And sometimes you have to be willing to let go of the money that you've already spent and invested in chasing those dreams. You have to be brave enough to admit when a path, even one that you fought very hard for, even when one you invested thousands in, is no longer serving you. Your past investments aren't a trap. They're not wasted. They taught you something valuable, even if that lesson is, this isn't the path for me. But I want to be very clear. I'm not anti-Amazon. Amazon is a powerful distribution channel. What I'm no longer willing to do, though, is to build my entire creative life inside one gated ecosystem, especially one where rules change without any warning, enforcement is automated, and human appeal is very limited. Going wide isn't rebellion, it's risk management. So the big question is Amazon KDP worth it? Well, my honest answer is maybe. It can work if you have capital, you understand ads, you accept platform risk, you're not dependent on it as your sole income. But remember, it's not passive, it's not beginner friendly anymore, and it's not the only way to publish. It requires substantial investment, not just the courses, though be very careful which courses you invest in and who you're learning from. Ask yourself, does this person have the same resources that I have? Or are they teaching from a 7-figure infrastructure that I simply don't have any access to? Beyond courses, you need ongoing money for software, design, and especially ads. As I said, lots of ads. This is not something you do to get out of debt. This is not a quick fix if you're struggling financially. You need capital to make this work. It's a real business that requires real time. This is not passive income, especially not at the start, and honestly, not later either, unless you've built substantial backlist momentum and have the ad budget to maintain it. Profit is possible, but it's not guaranteed. You need to treat it seriously, and you need lots of books to make it viable. Focus on quality, the quality content in high demand niches. Understand your numbers, your costs, your margins, your customer acquisition cost, your ad spend versus your return. Run it like a business, not a hobby. The platform risk is real. Amazon can and does terminate accounts, sometimes for legitimate reasons, sometimes for reasons that feel arbitrary or unfair, and when they do, you have very little recourse. That's not a risk everyone is willing to take, especially when you have invested thousands of dollars into it. The competition has changed. The KDP of 2026 is not the KDP of 2018 or 2020. The market is much more saturated. AI content is flooding in. Organic reach is nearly dead. If you're not prepared to invest in ads and ongoing marketing, your books will likely disappear into the void. So, yes, it can work for some people with the right expectations, with the right risk tolerance, with the right budget, with the right business model, which is why I'm no longer exclusive to Amazon. I'm still writing and publishing on Amazon, but I'm going wide. Draft to Digital, Kobo, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, and building my author platform on my terms. But here's what I really want you to hear. This isn't really about Amazon. It's about asking yourself, is the thing that I'm fighting for actually giving me freedom or just validating past decisions? Whatever your KDP is, whether it's a business, a course you invested in, a side hustle that's draining you, a dream that you've been chasing for years, I want you to ask yourself the question that I finally had to ask myself. Is the thing you're fighting for the key to your freedom? Or has the fight itself become the cage? Are you fighting because this path genuinely serves you? Or are you fighting because you're already so heavily invested? You've put so much money into it, so much time, that walking away feels impossible. Are you fighting for what you actually want, or are you fighting for what you thought you wanted when you first signed up for that course, or when you first invested those thousands of dollars? Are you chasing freedom, or are you chasing validation that all your past investments weren't wasted? Are you following a guide whose success is built on resources that you simply don't have access to? These are hard questions, brutal questions, but midlife demands that we get honest about them. I haven't wasted what I've learned. I've earned perspective, and on this channel, besides all the other midlife reinvention topics that we're going to discuss, I'll be sharing practical self-publishing insights, platform comparisons, mistakes that I paid for so that you don't have to, and how to build a creative business or businesses in midlife without burning yourself out. Letting go of my KDP-centric dream wasn't a failure, it was a graduation. It was the moment that I stopped fighting so hard for a broken system and started fighting for myself. It was the moment I stopped defending my past investments and mistakes and started making new choices based on who I am now, not on who I was when I first bought those courses. I've given myself permission to go back to all of my creative endeavors, my jewelry design, to build my books, my podcast, everything in a way that feels authentic, to create businesses on my terms, not on Amazon's terms alone. And that has been the biggest win of all. Not the account reinstatement, not the royalties, not proving that I could beat Amazon, not justifying the thousands I spent. The biggest win was giving myself permission to step back from something that no longer served me in the way that I wanted, even after I'd invested so heavily in it, even after I'd fought so hard to keep it. That's freedom, real freedom, not passive income, not being your own boss, not following the guru's system. Freedom is having the courage to change your mind, to admit when something isn't actually working and to let go of the sunken costs, yes, even the financial ones, especially the financial ones, and invest in a future that actually feels good, not just one that looks good on paper. So here's what I want to know. What has been your midlife reality check moment? What have you been fighting for that might actually be keeping you stuck? What dream have you outgrown but haven't had the courage to release yet? And what investment, financial or otherwise, are you trying to justify instead of letting it go? Drop it in the comments below and let's have a real honest conversation about what freedom truly means at this point in our lives. Because I think a lot of us are fighting battles that we don't even want to win anymore. We're just fighting because we've invested too much to walk away. We're just fighting because we don't want to admit that maybe we followed the wrong guide down the wrong path. But walking away isn't giving up. Sometimes it's the bravest thing that you can do. Sometimes it's the wisest investment that you can make, choosing your peace over proving that you were right. If this resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear this, someone who's fighting their own version of Amazon, someone who needs permission to stop, to breathe, to choose themselves over a dream that's no longer serving them. And if you're navigating your own midlife reinvention, if you're trying to figure out what comes next after the thing that you thought would be it didn't turn out the way that you hoped, I'd love for you to stick around. Subscribe if you haven't already. This is what we talk about here. The real stuff, the messy stuff, the truth about starting over in midlife. For deeper dives into these topics and exclusive content on midlife reinvention, head over to my Substack, where I continue these conversations. The link to my book, Breaking Free from the Mother Wound, is in the description below. Remember, your peace matters more than your productivity. Your well-being matters more than any of your wins, and you matter more than any business, any platform, any guru's system, any dream that's draining you. This is the Radiant Reset. I'm Beryl, and I'll see you in the next episode.